In this video, we're diving into a topic that's been generating a lot of enthusiasm and excitement, but to be fair, probably also a lot of controversy, which is the idea of living at sea permanently on a cruise ship. Now, we're specifically going to deep dive into the Villa Vie Residences Odyssey, which is this new company that is offering this unique lifestyle of the perpetual world cruise.
We took the plunge, so we actually have thought about this for a while and we've done it. We know though there's a lot of naysayers out there. There's a lot of risks involved, and for sure we're going to talk about those with you today. We feel good about it, but we'd love to know, what do you think about it? Did we make the right call? Would this be a choice that you'd make? And we'd love your comments.
So let's start with just a little bit of background, because that might help. The idea of living on a cruise ship and traveling around the world is not exactly unique. Some of you may have heard of the company called Life at Sea Cruises. It too promised residents the idea that they could live on a cruise ship and sail around the world, but that didn't exactly pan out.
No, it didn't. They went bankrupt. In fact, they never even got a ship after selling a lot of cabins. So that left a lot of people very disappointed, left others losing money and disappointed, and even others that wound up selling their homes or leaving their homes and possessions behind, and that was tough.
Yeah, nobody wants another life at sea situation because that would be horrible. However, the idea, at least, of living on a cruise ship and exploring the world and never having to unpack, that's really appealing to a lot of people, and it's certainly appealing to us.
Yeah. There's only one operating in the world, and it's a ship called the World. It's been around for more than 10 years, but it is very expensive. So you have to qualify to be on there, and it is not accessible to us and really most anybody else in the world. It's a very exclusive group. That leaves Villa Vie Residences very unique right now in the world.
So what makes Villa Vie Residences different? Well, for one, they offer two different options. In the first option, you can choose to buy a cabin. So it's yours, you own it, you can even decorate it as you like. But in the second option, you can choose to just rent the cabin. So you are only on it for like the segment of the world cruise that you choose. And that might last anywhere from like 2 to 3 months or however long you choose.
So that's part of what makes Villa Vie unique. They've got this mixture of owners and segment renters. But what's cool is they call everybody on board a resident. So there's no distinction between owners and renters. We're all residents when we get on the ship.
Yeah, it's like an apartment at sea, but way better. And what I really love is that we can cruise for a very long time, but the cruise price we pay ends up being probably way more affordable than if we were to pay the price per day for a short-term, more traditional cruise.
So the promise of Villa Vie is really exciting. We get to go around the world. We get amenities that we care about, of course, like the food and the gym and the community and the shows and everything else that comes with it. But let's get real, there are some risks. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
One of the things that gave us pause when we were considering buying a cabin on the Villa Vie Odyssey was that there was such a long delay in the launch of the Odyssey. And most of that was due to the fact that the Villa Vie company bought the ship from a different company, and that company had laid that ship up in dry dock for an extended period of time, for like several years, because of the COVID pandemic. So that meant when they got the ship had had a period of extended inactivity, and they had to do a lot of work to get it back up and running again.
And then we found out, kind of through that process, which was already tough, that the rudder stocks had to be replaced because they had worn too much, and that was kind of unexpected based on the plan to retro the ship. So that's a very big process, and they had to go out and find the right labor and the right materials and that kind of thing. Very, very intensive process. So that added weeks and weeks along with expectations and re-expectations that were met and then missed along the way while they fixed those rudder stocks.
And not only had the previous company lay the ship up in dry dock for an extended period of time, they had also let all of the certifications lapse. So that meant that Villa Vie had to recertify the Odyssey as a brand new ship, not just as an existing vessel. And when you do that, all of those certifications are really, really rigorous, and there are very many of them. And it took a long time to get through all of those certifications.
So that added a lot of more time. They were down to literally certifying every switch and every fuse on the ship, every light bulb, which ultimately added a lot of time. And of course, you can imagine the process involved. Again, expectations set and missed, and a lot of delays. But ultimately, we got through that. And we now know that all that stuff's been done and certified. We feel good about it now that it's done. But clearly, those delays were tough. We're past them now, and we're ready to go sailing.
One of the big concerns we had was realizing that this company was a startup company. And that always gives us concern. Consider a new restaurant in town. You ever been to a new restaurant in town? It starts with all of this promise. You think it's going to be amazing. But if you go to that restaurant in the first few weeks, the food is horrible. The service is worse. It's really not a great experience. But if you give it time, if you go there over the course of time, a few weeks later, you realize that they've learned from their mistakes and they've grown, and it could end up being the best restaurant in town.
Same thing happens on a cruise ship. They call it a shakedown period, where they kind of figure things out. And that's what's going on now. You've got to figure out how to take this new ship with this new crew, this new captain, this different product, and kind of put it all together and then deliver on the product expectation that you set for your customers. And you don't do that straight out of the gate. It takes a little while to kind of shake it out.
Yeah, while there's always risk involved in any new venture, we do think that Villa Vie company, the company itself, is learning from these mistakes, and they're taking steps to mitigate the problems. We've watched them train their staff. We've watched them put new processes in place. So we're feeling much more confident that even though that they're a new venture, that they're a startup, that they're learning and this growth curve is happening and they'll get to a good, stable place.
Yeah, ultimately, Villa Vie is going to succeed or fail on their ability to do what he just said, and that is kind of stabilize the product, deliver on expectations. And, you know, I believe all that's going to happen. It would be great if we could kind of wait around for them to do all that and buy our cabin on the third ship. By then, we'd be older, and the prices would probably be higher. So we're kind of embracing this being a pioneer as part of Villa Vie and the first ship, the Odyssey. We're looking forward, understanding that there's going to be hiccups and expectations that aren't always met. And that's just part of our journey now.
But let's get real. Living on a cruise ship means that you're going to be living in a much smaller space than compared to, say, a traditional home or an apartment or such like this, right? And it could lead to feelings of feeling confined or claustrophobia, and it could take a little bit to get used to something like that.
Yeah, fortunately, we don't live only in our cabin. There's a lot of common areas on the ship. So you think about the pool deck, you think about the gym, which we're very excited about. You think about quiet places like the library or going up on the top deck and reading a book. So we will have to figure out how to kind of navigate and find those places that are meeting the needs that we have right then, a quiet place or maybe a party on the pool deck. But remembering that we're not just in our room, that we've got all that as well, is something that's going to, I think, be good for us.
Yeah, I do also worry about the idea of not having enough storage space. That's often a problem on cruise ships. I love my stuff and I want access to my stuff, and I worry there's not going to be a lot of room to bring that on board. I also don't want to feel like my stuff is going to be around me and that we're going to be living in clutter, which could be a problem.
Yeah, we can't stand clutter. So fortunately, I think we've got a decent plan. We'll figure it out as we go, and I'm sure we'll check and adjust some things. But we've got things like underbed storage. We've got things like shelves for the wall, as well as we've consolidated a lot of stuff and gotten rid of a lot of stuff. So we're going to have to figure it out, because we don't want stuff stacked everywhere, and we want to be happy, but we also want to have our stuff. That's part of what's appealing to us about this residential cruise. It's our stuff. We're not just on a trip.
Yeah, and also when it comes to small space, though, I worry that we're living in a smaller space with more people than we're used to. This is a communal environment, and that could take some period of adjustment.
Yeah, for sure. We're excited about the community, but we're also people that really enjoy our alone time together and our alone time separate. So that's going to be something we navigate. You know, typically when you go on cruises, you see a lot of people and you're around a lot of people, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get away from them. It's going to be important for us to figure out how to enjoy the community, enjoy our time together, and enjoy our time alone. And that'll be something we figure out as we go forward.
Sailing on the Villa Vie Odyssey means that you're committing to a lifestyle where you're going to be at sea for months at a time. And that can take a lot of adjustment. For example, you're going to be away from your friends and family for a very long time. And that could be really difficult for people who are used to seeing them on a regular basis.
Also, there's always activities and excursions and things going on a cruise ship, but when you're on it that long, there is risk of it getting boring or it getting monotonous. And, that's something to consider. As we look at the itinerary and we see all the places we're going, we're more worried about either exhausting ourselves or FOMO, fear of missing out, because we don't want to miss most of the ports and we want to get out there and explore them. But it's certainly something that you have to consider.
Yeah, we've sailed for long periods on cruise lines like Azamara and Viking, but certainly we've never sailed for long periods like what we're talking about here, for like months at a time. So we realized that going into this, we had to give careful consideration to how we're going to adjust to something like this. And anyone who's thinking about doing this really needs to think about that.
Yeah. Also, the unexpected. Unexpected happens. We know that. Stuff like COVID, nobody expected that, or weather or geopolitical events or what have you. We know that not everything's going to go exactly as planned, and we're going to have to kind of roll with the punches when we're in an environment like this. And anybody that considers this has to know that and kind of make sure that they're ready for that.
Living at sea means that you are likely going to be physically distant from your regular doctor and your healthcare providers. Now, most cruise ships tend to have doctors on board, but they certainly don't have the specialized care that some people will need, especially as we get older.
Absolutely. And as you're all over the world, you might encounter a serious medical condition where you need to be evacuated to a land-based hospital, either from the sea or to a land-based hospital that has the specialty services that you need, even if you are on land.
Mm-hmm. And we certainly recommend that if you're considering doing this kind of thing, that you invest in really good travel health care insurance, so that if something does happen, you can be treated on land and there won't be a financial burden involved.
We're keeping our home base here in Washington, and a big part of that is so we can come back and have our normal checkups with our normal doctors and keep our routine. And we actually want to come home anyway, so we kind of plan our doctor's visits around our home visits. But the other thing that we're doing, and we're excited about this, is we've set up remote access with our providers here in Washington, and also our travel insurance has a remote care option where if we're somewhere around the world and we have an internet connection, we can actually speak with somebody, albeit remotely, that can help us figure out what to do, prescribe medicine, and such.
Mm-hmm. And we're also committed to prevention. We have told each other that we are definitely going to eat well, we're going to exercise regularly, and we're going to do whatever we can to prevent any issues from happening before they occur. When we were considering this investment, we knew that we had to be really realistic. And one of the things that concerned us was that Villa Vie Residences was such a new company. So it hadn't been around at all, so it really didn't have a long track record so that we can look into its financial viability. And that's something that we typically do, and we couldn't do that in this situation, and that gave us concern.
Yeah, it's a startup, so you don't have a track record, like you said. So we did the due diligence that we could do. We met with the CEO, we looked at the business case, we met with other people that were a part of the venture, but we really had to kind of step back and say, okay, this is a startup, there's some risk here, we understand the plan, and that was part of what we did as we went forward.
Mm-hmm. So at first we were thinking, let's just go low risk. So at first we weren't going to buy a permanent cabin. Instead, we were just going to buy a segment so that we would be on the ship for just a few months and kind of get a taste of the lifestyle to see if it's for us, and before we really committed to spending the money on a permanent cabin.
And anybody can do that. That's the segment rentals that we talked about earlier. So you go to the Villa Vie website, you look for the portion of the world cruise that you want to do, and you book it and pay for it as a rental, just like you would on any other cruise ship.
But then we started doing more calculations, and we're talking specifically about our financial situation, right? So if you were to go back and look at some of our videos on our cost breakdowns when we traveled to different cities, you would see how much money we were spending on some of this travel to these places. And what we realized that if we were to invest into Villa Vie and buy a cabin, and that in the end, we could end up saving money than if we were to continue with what we were doing before. Now that might not be the case for everyone, but for us, it started to make a lot more financial sense.
And it let us go to more places, including places that we wouldn't go to otherwise. We just wouldn't do it. But that was our assessment. There's clearly financial risk when it comes to anything about Villa Vie. It's just new and it's out there and it's getting figured out. So we highly recommend that you do what works for you. In our case, we're keeping our home. We're not selling anything. We're kind of taking our existing travel budget and allocating a portion of that to Villa Vie. And frankly, we're not putting anything into it that we can't lose, because you just don't know. Unexpected things happen. So as we've considered this, we're excited about the opportunity, we're realistic about the risk, and we kept our home. Other people have done different things. People have sold their homes, they've given up all their possessions and other things, and that works for them. That is not the way we operate. We're just not comfortable doing that. So as you assess this, make sure you do what makes sense for you.
We actually thought that there was a risk that we would not like the ship. I mean, we have been on some amazing ships before. We've been on Viking and Azamara and Windstar and some really terrific ships out there. And we know that this is an older ship, so we were actually a little worried that we might not like it.
But guess what? Fate intervened. We were actually in Belfast, of all places, which is where the ship was being refurbished and delayed. And we were there, and they allowed us to have a full ship tour. And as we looked at it, we really liked it. Yes, it's older. Yes, it's smaller. But as we looked at it, we liked the way it was laid out. We really felt like this is something we could see ourselves being a part of.
Yeah. And in addition to liking the ship, we liked the team as well. We really liked the staff there. It seemed like they were really committed to giving good care to the residents. And we also started to get to know the managers of the company. And we could see that they were committed to the company and making sure that we were getting really good value from this investment. So we really liked what we saw.
So guess what? We did it, and we're going to be documenting our adventures, and we're going to be putting out regular videos, and we'll be sharing all the good, the bad, and the ugly with you.
And the real question is, considering all of these risks, would you consider buying a cabin on a cruise ship? If so, let us know in the comments.
Let us know in the comments.